Hello guys, welcome to Knowledge India. In this tutorial we are going to see about EC2, which is one of the services from Amazon. So as we have discussed in other tutorials, that what Amazon Web Services offers, it's one of the leading cloud providers, so it has got up so many services, and it's okay. Those are listed here. I'm actually logged into Amazon Web Services console now, and you can see that you have got so many services on cloud, and there is a there are a lot of advantages if you actually make use of these. So we'll go ahead and we'll see how can we access EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. There's nothing but traditionally, as we used to have servers where we would be hosting all our like web servers, database servers, and all that we would be hosting. So the same thing, we can do it on cloud. We can actually provision a server of our choice. We can choose that what operating system do we want it there, how much do we want to put the compute power, how much memory do we need, how much storage do you need. All those things you can decide, and you can launch a server. You manage it completely, and like will be up in minutes. So I'm gonna I'll just switch to Frankfurt region, and we'll go to EC2. Now in this dashboard, we'll go ahead and we'll try to understand what different things mean. But for now, you can see that there are no running instances in this particular region. So I can go and press launch instance. Now you get to see, it says you need to choose an AMI. AMI is Amazon Machine Image. It's basically a copy of your disk, which will have your base operating system, and if any softwares which have been installed earlier, those things would be there. So from Amazon side, you will have many operating systems available here. If you want, you can go with the Linux flavor, which Amazon maintains. You can go with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. You have SUSE, Ubuntu, Windows. You have all this. I would want to first do a Windows setup and show you the same, and we can go through Linux as well. I'm going to choose Windows Server 2012. 64-bit. Now next step is instance type. Remember, we talked about while we are launching a server, you can choose that how much compute, memory, and storage do you need. So this is where you can do that. So there are classes defined by Amazon. You have got from something as small as T2 micro to going ahead something big. There are really big servers as well, which have got 122 GB of RAM and all. Now, for this tutorial, I'll go ahead and choose something T2 medium, which is 4 GB RAM. And you need to see there is something called instance storage here. So if you look at this column, for few of the instance type, you have got something here. Now, what is the difference between instance storage and EBS? So there are two types of disks which you can actually add to your server, right? The first type is instance storage, and the second one is EBS. The difference between the two: instance storage is not persistent. So if you stop your machine and start it again, the data which is there on this instance store goes away. right? Whereas EBS is like your traditional hard disk. Whatever you save here persists, right? So what we're gonna do is, for now, I will just probably choose this, or if you want, we can actually do something like this, so that we can take a look at instance store as well. So fine, I'm choosing m3.large, going ahead. How many instances do I want to launch? Number of instances 1. Spot instances, no, I'm not requesting for that, we'll cover this later. By default, we can launch it in the default VPC subnet. There are 2 subnets in this VPC. I can choose one, or I can just leave it. For now I'm leaving it. Use subnet enabling. This setting allows you, or basically decides whether a public IP should be given to your EC2 or not. What's public IP? What's private IP? So any machine or any EC2 which you launch on Amazon, it is going to have 2 IP addresses, right? One is private IP, so that would be visible only within their network, or only within that VPC where this EC2 is getting launched. But if you have to access it from outside, you need to have visibility of that machine, and in order to do that, we put a public IP to it. So we'll cover these concepts more in other tutorials where we are gonna do VPC stuff. For now, I'm gonna make it enable so that our machine gets a public IP. IAM role, I'm giving it none for now. Shutdown behavior, every time I stop my machine, what happens? Whether it should just stop it or it should terminate. I'm saying just stop it, do not terminate. I might want to start it again. Protect against accidental termination, just a setting. If you enable this, first time you're gonna try and terminate the machine, it will say that you need to disable this termination, and you need to disable this protection, and only then you would be able to terminate it. I'm leaving it for now. I wanted shared tenancy. I do not want a dedicated hardware for my machine. I'll say next. Wow. Now here is where you add storage to your system. So remember, on a previous step where you chose instance type, you have already chosen how much RAM and how much CPU do you need it, right? Now is the time that you will say how much disk do you want. Now understand this, on the root, this is actually EBS type, so it is consistent. It is going to be persistent. So this is a Windows machine, so your root is going to be like your C drive, right? So you would not want that if you stop your machine, all your OS and everything goes away, right? So that's why our C drive here, or the root device, is EBS. And by default, because this AMI is of size 30 GB, it shows 30 here. We can go ahead and increase that as well, and it is advisable to that. I'm going to make it 100 GB. The type is general purpose SSD. I'm putting solid state drive, so it runs faster, lesser lag in terms of delete on termination. So now this new EBS volume gets created. 100 GB volume would get created and would be attached to my EC2. Now if I click this delete on termination, whenever I delete my EC2, the EBS which is attached goes away automatically. So I do not have to go separately and delete that. You may choose to tick this or uncheck this, whatever. This is the other stuff. You remember there was some 40 GB, 32 GB instance store available along with this type of instance which we chose. So this is that instance store, right? It will not show the size, it doesn't show, but that much size you will get as another drive, right? So it is attached here. So I'll go next. We can give a name to this instance just for us to remember it in the console. I'm just giving a name called, oh my god, okay, yep. So now we are here. This step talks about the security, right? So now you are going to put your system out there on cloud, and people talk that sometimes they say that it is insecure, anything can happen. It's not like that. We choose that from where and who all can actually access this, right? So you know that in any operating system, be it Windows or be it Linux, there would be a mechanism within the operating system to control the traffic, coming from outside, right? So in Windows you have Windows Firewall, which actually controls that, on what all ports traffic is allowed from outside. So that's one layer of security. Adding to that, Amazon provides you security groups. So you create a security group and you say that, I want traffic to be coming on 3389 port, which is for remote desktop. So now this machine is going to get created somewhere in Amazon data center, and I want to access it from here. How would I do that? I'll use my remote desktop, and I'll log into this machine. So we are defining a rule here that traffic on port 3389 should be allowed from anywhere. Now, doing anywhere is actually insecure, because as I can access it from my place, anybody else also can try and hit this thing. So we would be covering this, in another tutorial, that how do you actually secure your instances even further by tightening the rules in your security group. For now, to go ahead, I'll just give a name for this security group, and we'll move forward. So I'm giving this, I'll say review and launch. I can just review this. It says, see, it is open to the world. So we are going to address this later on. Go down. I've chosen an M3 large machine, which has got 6.5 ECU, 2 virtual CPUs. So say when one ECU is nearly equal to 1 gigahertz of frequency, right? So the machine which we are launching, you can consider it will work around roughly 6.5 gigahertz. It has got 7.5 GB of RAM, an instance storage of 32 GB, and remember we have added 100 GB at the root as well. So that's it. I'll say launch. Now what is this? Okay, so you need to create a key, and these keys would be used, these are more like, one more line of, or one more layer of authentication before you try to access your machine. So in case of Windows, okay, let me just give this, let's say download keep here. Okay, it gets downloaded to my machine, got downloaded. That's the launch instance. Okay, so it's getting launched. You can go press view instances. Okay, so it's going on. It's in pending state now. We'll come to these things. So I was talking that you would be using this key which you downloaded to actually access your machine. In case of Windows machines, we would be able to do a right click and get the password for that. Admin password. So in order to get that, we would be using these machines, these key. I'm sorry. And in case of Linux, we would be using the, we would be using it via PuTTY. I hope all of you know PuTTY. So I have it just put our PuTTY. So in order to use it, we again will have to use the key which we downloaded in this section. So we will cover that for now. So okay, here's good thing. So our machine seems to be in running state now. Status checks have been initialized. We can go back and check. So there are two checks which they do. So in some time both of this should become green. So we are launching an instance in probably what, 5 minutes? Yeah, so that's fast. Let's go with this by the time it launches so that we understand what it is. So this is the instance ID, which is a unique ID, like so that you can identify your instance out of all. Status now is running. Instance type, remember we chose it. Then we talked that every machine will have 2 IP addresses, and related to that you have DNS as well. So here we have a private IP which is 172. Now you cannot access this machine using this IP address because this is private. Just its scope is limited to their network only. But yeah, suppose going in future you actually launch 4 or 5 machines, so communication between those machines can actually happen over the private IP. We'll cover that. There are advantages of doing that. This is the public IP which would be accessible from outside. So from my place I would actually connect to this machine using this IP. In which availability zone have we launched it? EU Central 1A. We had chosen Frankfurt. Frankfurt is our region. Every region has got multiple availability zones. So this is one of the availability zone. Remember, we created a security group called SGKI instance, and we added some rule to it. So that's the security group. No scheduled events. Using what AMI it was launched, you can say that. Platform is Windows. Subnet ID, there was a VPC, default VPC, which we chose in the start, and within that, in one of the subnet it has been launched. There's an network interface attached, all that. Root device is there, so you can actually check that. This is the root device. The EBS which we created, 100 GB. That stuff you can do a right click and check that. So I just opened it. Wow. Okay, so this is that 100 GB EBS volume, which is the root device for our instance. You can see that it is attached to the instance currently. Yep, right. Let's go back and see the tag which we had created. K instance, the same thing is reflected here. See, I'll try to refresh this. It should have come up by now. Once it's running, we should be able to do get Windows password. Wow. So what I did is I just went and did a right click, get Windows password. Now it asks that KI key pair was actually used for this machine. You need to upload that file and then you'll be able to decrypt the password. So I'm gonna say choose file. I'll choose this thing and I'll set decrypt password. Wow, I got it. So I'm gonna take this, put it here. Okay, I better save this. Okay. Because that's better just to save that. So now we have launched our machine. We have the credentials to connect to it. I'm just gonna launch our remote desktop, MSTSC. Okay. I'll put this public IP there. Okay, I'll say connect. Okay, now the first thing actually tries to put the username which you are using on your machine itself. But the machine which we are trying to connect currently has a completely separate domain. So if you press \, the domain which it is trying to use, it actually gets rid of it, right? So I do this. I'll say administrator, and I'll take the password, put it here, and I'll say okay. It's configuring, says okay, That's okay, don't ask me this thing. Yes, go ahead. So while it comes up, if you launch a Linux machine, rest of the process of launching remains the same. Just that in order to access a Linux machine you raise a firewall request against the IP of the machine which you are trying to use and the port which you would be using, which is 3389 or 22 based on the platform. Now, okay, the machine is up. Let me show you this, right? So we are here. You can look at this IP address. Private IP is also being shown. It is an M3 large. I'm gonna just launch this stuff. We had chosen 2012 operating system, server 2012, and that is what we have got. So I'm gonna go here, look at this PC. So you have 100 GB EBS, out of which some space has been taken by the operating system. You also have a next DRAM, but so this is instance storage. It's written also as temporary storage. You can go ahead and read this. Let's read this, what's written. This is an instance store disk and is provided at no additional charge, offers increased performance since it is local to the host. The number of instance store disks vary by instance type. Data on this drive will be lost in case of impairment or stopping the instance. Please ensure that any important data is backed. So remember this, guys, there are different use cases for which we actually go for instance store. We will be covering that separately, but for your normal persistent storage, you should add only EBS disk. You can add n number of EBS disks here of whatever size, even to multiple terabytes it can go, and you can add it here. That should be fine for instance store. You need to be a bit careful, and remember that data gets lost on the instance store when you actually stop the instance and start again. If you just do a reboot at OS level, data would still be there. So I'll just come out of it and I guess that should be helpful to you guys. There's a lot more to cover. We would be going through all reservation things, AMIs, volumes in our upcoming tutorials. Please be in touch, and I hope to explain you more things. Thank you. Bye-bye.